All right, good afternoon. An update from our humanitarian colleagues in Iraq who tell us that nearly 500,000 people have been forced from their homes since the start of the military operations to retake Mosul 6 months ago. Lise Grande, the humanitarian coordinator for Iraq, called the sheer volume of civilians still leaving the city staggering. She said the worst case scenario is that up to 1 million people may flee Mosul. Aid partners are working around the clock to expand emergency camps to shelter hundreds of thousands more people who may flee in the coming weeks and days. The UN estimates currently as many as 500,000 people remain in Daesh-controlled parts of western Mosul, including 400,000 people in the old city. Ms. Grande stressed that although nearly 2 million people have received life-saving assistance and families are being reached with aid, Mosul has pushed humanitarian agencies to their operational limits. More information online. And you will have seen that over the weekend we issued a statement on Syria in which we condemned the attack on Rashidin in West Aleppo on 5,000 evacuees traveling from the towns of Foa and Kefraya to government-controlled areas. We called on the parties to ensure the safety and security of those waiting to be evacuated and also stressed that those responsible for the attack must be brought to justice. For his part, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Stephen O'Brien, said that he was horrified by the reports of killings of scores of people in this attack. He said the perpetrators of such monstrous and cowardly attacks displayed a shameless disregard for human life, stressing that international humanitarian law is very clear. Warring parties must protect civilians and distinguish between military and civilian targets. And an update on an issue you've been asking about in the past on Western Sahara. I can tell you that our peacekeeping colleagues told us today that over the weekend, 12 of the 17 staff members from MINURSO who previously had not been allowed to return arrived in LAAYOUNE, with one additional staff member expected to return during the course of the day. Administrative procedures are being completed for the return, reassignment, or retirement of the remaining 4 staff members. And over the weekend, the acting head of the UN mission in South Sudan, Mustafa Soumare, urged warring parties in the country to show restraint in the face of escalation of violence and to remember their responsibilities to protect civilians. The mission says it's concerned over reports of clashes between government and opposition forces in various locations around the country. It's monitoring the situation in Raga, in western Bahr el-Ghazal, after receiving reports of clashes leading to civilian displacements. The situation remains calm but tense in Wau as peacekeepers patrol the town with a focus on protecting civilians. The mission is also closely monitoring the situation in Wunkur and Unity State, where the UN patrol over the weekend reported a large number of government soldiers and heavy weapons and the absence of a civilian activity. Meanwhile, the patrol to Pajok in eastern Equatoria returned to the mission's base in Torit over the weekend. However, despite assurances from the Sudan People's Liberation Army and government authorities, the patrol was limited to certain areas of Pajok. The mission intends to deploy another patrol tomorrow to visit areas outside of Pajok where displaced civilians are reportedly And also in South Sudan, World Food Program has condemned the killing last week of 3 workers contracted by the agency's office in Wau as they tried to make their way to a WFP warehouse where they worked. Humanitarian coordinator for the country, Eugene Owusu, has called for an urgent investigation to identify those who are responsible and bring them to justice. And also on WFP, our colleagues for WFP in Somalia reported security incidents in Mogadishu yesterday. In the morning, an explosion occurred 100 meters behind a moving WFP convoy. The occupants of the vehicles, which included WFP staff and a visiting journalist, are safe, although 2 private security guards escorting the team were wounded. The convoy was returning from KM13, an area on the outskirts of Mogadishu where WFP is providing life-saving emergency food and nutritional assistance to people impacted by the drought. And the Commissioner General of UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency, Pierre Krahenbuhl, met with the Prime Minister of the State of Palestine, Rami Hamdallah, in Ramallah today. They discussed the rights and the critical needs of Palestine refugees in the West Bank, including Jerusalem and Gaza. The Commissioner General updated the Prime Minister on his recent visit to Aleppo in Syria and the situation of Palestine refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. They also conferred on the issue of the curriculum being taught in UNRWA schools in light of recent public misrepresentation of the matter. Mr. Krahenbuhl clarified that in conformity with its practice since the 1950s, based on an agreement between UNESCO and UNRWA, UNRWA teaches host country curricula in its schools. This includes the Palestinian Authority's curriculum, and the Commissioner General clarified that UNRWA has no intention of changing the practice. More details on the UNRWA website. And you will have seen that late on Thursday, the Secretary General shared his choices for the positions of executive secretaries of a number of regional commissions. For the record, he selected Vera Songwe of Cameroon as Economic Commissioner, head of the Economic Commission on Africa, Olga Agayorova of Slovakia for Economic Commission for Europe, and Mohammed Ali Al-Hakim of Iraq as the head of the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, known as ESCWA. The Secretary General also asked Shamshad Akhtar of Pakistan to continue in her role as Executive Secretary of the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. The Secretary General is grateful for the outgoing senior leaders who have served with distinction and a true commitment to the ideals of the UN, and will continue to make announcements in the coming weeks on other senior positions. I want to flag a couple of things. For tomorrow, in the Trusteeship Council, the President of the General Assembly will convene a high-level Sustainable Development Goals Financing Lab to highlight the importance of sustainable financing to achieve the universal set of goals. The one-day event will focus on how to drive the transformation to align financial markets with sustainable development, as well as showcase concrete ways in which member states can approach financing of different SDGs. More information on the PGA's website. And tomorrow, my guests will be John Ging, along with Manuel Fontaine, the Director of the Office of Emergency Operations for UNICEF, Ugochi Daniels, Chief of the Humanitarian and Fragile Context Branch of UNFPA. They will be here to brief you on their recent visits to South Sudan and Somalia. Today we have now 85 members on the honor roll, as we thank Andorra and Dominica for their payments. And lastly, I wanted to say a few words about a friend and colleague who, as you may know, passed away on Thursday after a battle with lung cancer. For almost 30 years, Maria Zoupaniotis was the press counselor at the mission of the Republic of Cyprus. And I think if we kept track of these things, she would have been the dean of the spokespeople of the missions. Over the years, I had the privilege of working with her and preparing quite a few Cyprus talks, whether in Geneva, Bergenstock, Green Tree, or right here in the Secretariat. Maria was a true professional and someone who passionately loved her country and always a pleasure to work with. In fact, no one could deliver a démarche quite like Maria. I think when we sometimes strayed from the agreed vocabulary on the Cyprus issue, we often had a message to call her back at the mission. She would make her point with tact, precision, and good manners. Maria will be remembered and missed in these halls. All of us here, and I think you will join us in sending our deepest sympathies and most sincere condolences to her husband and your colleague, Apostolos, and details of the funeral arrangements are in my office. I think there's visitation today and tomorrow at a funeral home. On that note, I will take your questions. Yes.
Thank you, Stéphane. What's the reaction from the Secretary General after the failed launch of missile in North Korea and the increased tension between the United States and the Pyongyang at this moment? It's an effort maybe from the United Nations to try to find a diplomatic way before it goes into other options, as the United States have said all the options are on the table.
Well, we're obviously deeply concerned about the rising tensions that we've seen in the Korean Peninsula. We call on all to redouble their diplomatic efforts. I think the latest launch that we saw over the weekend from the DPRK was troubling. We call on the DPRK to take all the steps necessary to de-escalate the situation and return to a dialogue on denuclearization. All Security Council resolutions must be fully implemented, and we note that the Security Council has consistently stated its commitment to a peaceful diplomatic and political solution. Excuse me.
Thank you, Stéphane. Following up on this issue, the UN used to have a special representative for North Korea. Does in view of the critical situation, does the Secretary General intends to appoint one?
Not that I'm aware at this point. The post has been unfilled for quite some years, but I'm not aware of any plans to appoint someone, but which should not mean that we're not watching the situation very carefully. Mr. Lee.
Some other things, but I guess on that topic, I think it was in March 13th, last time the mission of DPRK held a press conference in here, they said that they'd written to the Secretary General, among other things, asking him to have some international forum of legal experts on the issue of sanctions and non-proliferation. So I just wanted to know, you'd said at that time you were unaware of the letter. Have you checked? Has the letter in fact been
I
received?
have nothing more to share with you on the letter.
What do you mean? Is there a letter?
I have no more information to share with you than what I've said, which was not much to start with.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, there's this, I guess I just wanted to there's been a growing coverage of Lebanon seeking to shut down refugee camps around its Rayak Air Force Base and the prospect of thousands of Syrian refugees having to return home. And I'm just wondering whether it's Sigrid Kaag or whoever is dealing with this for the UN, what is the status? Or do they oppose that? Do they think it should not be done? And what steps are being taken?
Well, any change in how the refugees are being housed needs to be done extremely carefully, and I'll see what our colleagues at UNHCR are doing. Yep.
Steph, I have a question on evacuation convoy attack. Which kind of information do you have about circumstances, and who is responsible for this attack, and how this can affect the deal to evacuation or the future deal about that? Thank you.
Which convoy? The Somalia or Syria?
No, Syria.
Oh, Syria. Sorry, because we talked about we had talked about a convoy. No, we don't have full information on the attack. Obviously, as we've stated in the past, the UN is not involved in these exchanges between the four towns, though we've been closely supporting the Syrian Arab Red Crescent as they provide help to those who arrive. We have no particular information on who may have committed this heinous act, and we very much hope that we will see what appears to be the deliberate targeting of civilians. Matthew.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, particularly because the UN has its mission in Mali. There's news there that up to 47 radio stations face closure by the government. Many of them are in the interior of the country. They have temporary licenses, but not permanent licenses, and they've been told if they don't, that they face closure. Does the UN mission there or any other aspect
I
of the
don't have
UN?
anything on that.
Also in Cameroon, where you said on Thursday that the Lansani fall, I guess I found just full quote where he said that he trusts that the internet will be gradually or progressively introduced to the rest of the country. I guess many people there were left wondering, is it acceptable to only have it be in institutions? What's the expectation of the UN in terms of the timing? And also, since then, Catholic clergy have received these threats of massive fines. They've distributed on Easter to their congregants, basically for taking part in a nonviolent protest of the treatment of Anglophones.
I think
I
would refer you to what Mr. Lansani Fall said. I echoed what he said. Obviously, we would like to see a return of the internet as soon as possible, and that's the discussions he's been having with the government.
Did he attempt to talk to Paul Biya? This is because, as you may know, Jeune Afrique and other publications have said that Antonio Guterres sought to speak to Paul Biya and was unable to. And I'm just wondering.
I'm not aware of the level of whether or not Mr. Lansani Fall attempted to speak to Paul Biya. He spoke to the highest authorities he was able to speak to. You're free to contact his office for more details.
I'm asking you about the 38th floor. Did anyone on the 38th floor, whether Secretary General or Deputy Secretary General?
I'm not going to get into details of people attempting to call one person or another. Oleg.
Thanks, Stefan. What's happening with the gym after the appointment of Ms. Gamba?
Ms. Gamba will be staying as head of the gym for the next few weeks, and a replacement will be found for her. But she remains at the head of the gym for the next few weeks.
There were already some claims in the last couple of days by the Syrian authorities that the international coalition convened an airstrike. Apparently, they hit some chemical warehouse or something like that. Were the UN or any of the missions over there, were they able to substantiate these allegations?
I'm not aware of, but you may also want to check with the OPCW. Yep.
On the regional commissions, I guess I just wanted to, I did see that Thursday after hours announcement, but what I wondered is there are 5 commissions, if I'm correct. And you made announcements about three have new leaders, one, there was the person was asked to stay on. What about ECLAC in Latin America? Why was there no?
Ms. Barcena, as far as I know, continues to head it.
Is there, so the Ban Ki-moon sort of 5-year rule idea is no longer applicable?
That's not at all what I said.
No, but I'm wondering, how
No,
long?
that's not what I said. The Secretary General will make the changes he feels are necessary in due time. Thank you.